The NFL draft is this month, and we are so excited to see where Drake Maye goes. We're going to look at some of his pros and cons as a player and some of his pros and cons in terms of his fantasy production, ceiling and floor. We're going to talk about some draft capital potentials, some landing spots. We're going to talk about his dynasty value in accordance with those landing spots. Dak, what are some of Drake Maye's pros?
Yeah, so Drake May, when you look at him, what we often talk about with quarterback is we like to see a solid rushing floor. And Drake May has that. He's not the craziest runner, but he's not a statue either. He ran for almost 700 yards and seven touchdowns in 2022. It went down a little bit. He got to like almost 500 yards and nine rushing touchdowns in his last season in college, but still a solid runner. He'll probably hit like 300 yards a season in the NFL, which you'll definitely take those points and you'll take the couple touchdowns that he runs for too. We like to see that. We also like to see his just general overall production that he had in college, especially his sophomore year. He was just incredible. Threw for 38 touchdowns, seven picks. Just was a great player. Another thing to like about Drake May, he had this breakout season when he was 20 years old. So that's really young for a quarterback, and it's just really impressive to see someone that young just tearing up college defenses. So it just speaks to how great of a prospect he is. Dalton, do you have any additional pros to talk about?
Yeah, so Drake May, he does have that prototypical size we like to see out of quarterbacks, kind of like that Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence type build, which is great to see for a quarterback. He also has a really strong arm, which is, you always like to see a strong arm. That's exciting. And he throws a great deep ball. Drake May doesn't have that many cons. The couple things we can talk about is that he didn't have as a productive season in 23 as he had in 22. He only had 24 touchdowns and nine picks as opposed to 38 touchdowns and seven picks. It's a big gap in the touchdowns there. He did lose Josh Downs, which was his best weapon, so maybe you can attribute to that, but I still think Drake May is going to be a fantastic player in the NFL. And one more con about Drake May is that he does try to make those hero ball throws sometimes. He might overestimate his arm strength, try to really fit in those tight windows, which might cause him to throw an interception or two, might cause some ugly interceptions that might happen, but we still think he'll be good. Now let's talk about some potential landing spots. Dak, what are we thinking?
Yeah, so early on, everyone was projecting him to go to the Washington Commanders. It was always Caleb 1, Drake May 2. That has changed recently. Now you're looking at Jaden Daniels, who's the odds-on favorite to go to Washington. So we wrote down three spots that we wanted to talk about. One of them was Washington, and the other two were New England and Minnesota. Dalton, you want to talk about Minnesota first?
So Minnesota is the holy grail landing spot for Drake May. This we don't think is very likely, but it could happen if Drake May falls down a couple picks and then Minnesota trades up. It could definitely happen, and May would be an absolute menace in Minnesota. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, the head coach of Kevin O'Connell. That's just a recipe for fantasy points out the wazoo. He's going to be an absolute stud if he goes to Minnesota. We don't. It's probably the least likely of the three landing spots, but if that does happen, I could see him rising all the way up to the 103 in a 12-team 6-point passing touchdown format, most likely closer to the 104. Dak, what do you think about Washington?
Washington's another solid spot. They brought in Cliff Kingsbury to be the offense coordinator. He likes to throw the ball a lot, so that should generate fantasy points. They've also got Terry McLaurin there, Jahan Dotson, who was not really great his second year, who could turn it around maybe year three. It's a solid spot. It's not Minnesota by any means, but it could get a lot worse than Washington. So if Drake May is going there, I'm thinking probably still maybe 103 in a 12-team 6 point, just because I'm more sold on his talent and his ability to succeed as a passer than Janie Daniels. In a 4 point, I'm still probably taking Daniels over May if he goes to Washington. But yeah, he's still in that like 103 to 105 range. It really depends on your league format, I think.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the worst landing spot, and as of right now, probably the most likely landing spot, and that's New England. The Patriots have right now probably the worst offensive weapons core in the entire NFL in terms of receiving the ball. They have no wide receivers that are any good besides Demario Douglas. He's probably a good three. Hunter Henry's fine. Like they just have so much mid, and actually not even mid. They have below mid. Their team's just terrible. That's not to say Drake May will be an automatic failure on this team. He could go and turn the franchise around. Maybe be Tom Brady 2.0. He's not going to do that, but he could maybe. We do believe in May as a prospect, so even if he does go to New England, he's still probably our 105, maybe 106 if you're on a tight end premium. I could see Bowers going ahead of him if Bowers gets a good landing spot. But if he goes to New England, that also means he's getting third overall draft capital, which means New England's going to have to probably play him for 2 to 3 years, even if he's not that good. So it gives him a long time to develop. And they're going to add weapons at that time. They literally have to add weapons because they have nobody there. Dak, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, New England is just an awful spot. I'm really hoping he doesn't go there. As someone that owns the 103 in a 12-team 6 point passing touchdown, I really hope he doesn't go there. I think You kind of saw this with Will Levis last year. A lot of people just started to hate on him as a prospect, and it showed in his value in the community. And I think I've been looking at polls, at least on Twitter. They'll say if May is in New England, Daniels is in Washington, and McCarthy's in Minnesota, who are you taking? And May is consistently in third by such a wide margin. I think you could see a Will Levis type of hate start to form towards Drake May if he goes to New England, just because the landing spot is so bad. And that is something you can exploit because Drake May is such a better prospect than Will Levis was. If you're one of those guys who owns like the 103, 104 in your leagues, and you know that everyone's just so out on Drake May, you can trade down to like the 105, 106 and collect the value there, taking May that late. Because people will hate him if he goes there. If you want another example, like look at Bryce Young last year. That was such a dumpster fire of an offense. That could happen to Drake May, but he also, like Dalton said, could turn that franchise around. But people are going to expect that does not happen. So you can definitely capitalize on the value that you're getting in your rookie drafts.
Hope you enjoyed the video. If you're excited to draft Drake May, like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.